Okay, okay. Here we go. Alright, y'all, so welcome to this stream where I'm going to be reading Napoleon Hill's book, Outwitting the Devil. What do you think of this thumbnail that I made? So I made him the NPC guy because he gets triggered a little bit. Because Napoleon Hill in the book gets him to reveal some secrets of his deception and lies and schemes. So before I jump into the book, and I'm not going to be reading the whole book. This is actually the second time I've read it, not including this one, so I guess this will be my third. But the first time I read it was just on Audible, and I thought it was very interesting, and I walked away from it for a year after I finished it, and I read it for a second time with making highlights in the Kindle. So you'll see as I go through here. See? Yellow is question, pink is answer. And I highlighted the ones that I thought were valuable, that were fascinating, and valuable meaning like relatable to our current world. But before we get into it, I think it's important to go over this thing, an analysis. Let us now briefly analyze this strange interview you're about to begin. Some who read will want to ask, after they finish it, did you really interview the devil? Or did you merely interview an imaginary devil? Some may wish to answer the answer to this question before they begin the interview. Now, I think this is important because the content is valuable, and having having this paragraph introduce the interview kind of can make skeptics at least have an open mind and check it out. So I will, in my only truthful way I can answer, by saying that the devil I interviewed may have been real, just as he claimed to be, or he may have been the creation of my own imagination. Whichever he was, wherever real or imaginary, it is of little importance compared with the nature of the importance conveyed through the interview. See how important that is? Whether real or imaginary, it is of little importance compared with the nature of the information conveyed in the interview. The important question is this: does the interview convey dependable information which may be helpful to people who are trying to figure out their place in the world? If it conveys that sort of information, no matter whether it is conveyed in the form of fact or fiction, then it is worthy of serious analysis through careful reading. So yeah, basically saying this can be valuable whether you're a skeptic or not. So let's get into the interview. To the first question that I wrote down. Alright. Start by telling me where you live, then describe your physical appearance. And the devil says, my physical appearance? Why, my dear Earthbound, my dear Mr. Earthbound, I have no physical body. I would be handicapped by such an encumbrance as those in which you earthbound creatures live. I consist of negative energy, and I live in the minds of people who fear me. I also occupy 1/2 of every atom of physical matter, and every unit of mental and physical energy. Perhaps you will better understand my nature if I tell you I am the negative portion of the atom. Okay, let's read on. Oh, I see what you're preparing to claim. You are laying the foundation to say that if it were not for you, there would be no world, no stars, no electrons, no atoms, no human beings, nothing. Is that correct? True, absolutely true. Well, if you only occupy 1/2 of the energy and matter, who occupies the other half? The other half is occupied by my opposition. Opposition? What do you mean? The opposition is what you earthbound call God. So you have the universe dividing up with God, is that your claim? not my claim, but at the actual fact. Before this interview is finished, you will understand why my claim is true. You will also understand why it has to be true, and there could be no world such as yours, no earthbound creatures such as you. I am no beast with a forked tongue and a spiked tail. Let's continue. But you do control the minds of 98 out of 100 people, right? You said so yourself. Who causes all their misery in this 98% devil-controlled world if you do not? I have not said that I do not cause all the misery of the world. On the other hand, I boast of it. It is my business to represent the negative side of everything, including the thoughts of you earthbound people. How else could I control people? My opposition controls positive thought. I control negative thought. So how do you gain control of the minds of people? Oh, that's easy. I merely move in and occupy the unseen space of the human brain. I sow the seeds of negative thought in the minds of people so I can occupy and control the space. You must have many tricks and devices by which you gain and hold control of the human mind. To be sure, I employ tricks and devices to control human thought. My devices are clever ones too. So go ahead then, devil. Describe your cleverest tricks. One of my cleverest devices for mind control is fear. I plant the seeds of fear in the minds of people, and as the seeds germinate and grow through use, I control the space they occupy. The 6 old effective fears are the fear of poverty, criticism, ill health, loss of love, old age, and death. So far so good. What do y'all think of this interview? It's pretty intense and valuable and interesting. You know, if somebody was actually to interview the devil be real, then, and off of that, let's just say how it's been said that the devil's greatest trick is convincing you that it doesn't exist. Let's move on. Which of these 6 fears serve you the most? The first and the last, poverty and death. At one time or another during life, I tighten my grip of all people through one or both of these. I plant these fears in the minds of people so deftly that they believe them to be their own creation. I accomplish this end by making people believe I am standing just beyond the entrance gate of the next life, waiting to claim them after death, for eternal punishment. Of course, I cannot punish anyone except in that person's own mind. Through some form of fear, but fear of the thing which does not exist, is just as useful to me as fear of that which doesn't exist. All forms of fear extend to the space I occupy in the human mind. Explain how you gain this control over human beings. The story is too long to be told in a few words. It began over a million years ago, but when the first man began to think, up to that time I had control over all of mankind. But enemies of mine discovered the power of positive thought, placed it in the minds of men, and then began a battle of my part to remain in control. So far, I have done quite well by myself, having lost only 2% of the people to my opposition. I take it from the answer that men who think are your enemies. Is that correct? It is not right, but it is correct. Tell me something more about the world in which you live. I live wherever I choose. Time and space does not exist to me. I am a force best described to you as energy. My favorite physical dwelling place, as I've told you, is in the mind of people. I control a part of the brain space of every human being. The amount of space I occupy in each individual's mind depends upon how little or what sort of thinking that person does. As I have told you, I cannot entirely control any person who thinks. You speak of your opposition. What do you mean by that? My opponent controls all of the positive forces in the world, such as love, faith, hope, and optimism. My opponent also controls the positive factors of all natural law throughout the universe, the forces which keep the earth and the planets and all the stars balanced in their courses, but these forces are meek in the comparison with those who operate in the human mind under my control. You see, I do not seek control of stars and planets. I prefer the control of the human mind. So where did you acquire your power? And by what means do you add to it? I add to my power by appropriating the mind power of earthbound. As they come through the gate at the time of death, 98 out of 100 who come back to my plane from earth plane are taken over by me, and their mind power is added to my being. I get all who come over and with any form of fear. You see, I am constantly at work, preparing the minds of people before death, so I can appropriate them when they come back to my plane. All right, so let's stop at that one right there, because that's a really interesting, and it's a very interesting answer that has a lot of depth to it. So you could tell that Napoleon Hill was religious, believed Christian in the early 20th century. So for them, they believe this, and it's interesting to be able to see certain creators and influencers combine science and spirituality. And I feel that this book has that theme come up once in a while, but not all the time. But it's interesting, as you can see over here, come to the gate at the time of death. 98 out of 100 who come back to the plane from Earth are taken over by me, and their mind power is added to my being. So it's like the devil, according to this answer, wants to spread as much fear amongst people as possible, because that's how it gets energy, almost like an energy vampire, but on a massive scale. You see, I am constantly at work preparing the minds of people before death, so I can appropriate them when they come back to my plane. Interesting. Interesting. Let's see. Okay, cool. All right, so let's keep going. I think we already there. All right, so we're at the bottom one. Will you tell me how you go about your job of preparing human minds so you can control them? Let's see what the devil has to say. I have countless ways of gaining control over human minds while they are still on the earth plane. My greatest weapon is poverty. I deliberately discourage people from accumulating material wealth because poverty discourages men from thinking and makes them easy prey for me. My next best friend is ill health. An unhealthy body discourages thinking. Then I have countless thousands of workers on earth who aid me in gaining control of human minds. I have these agents placed in every calling. They represent every race and creed and every religion. Okay, so that's pretty fascinating. So if the devil is real, one of its tricks or weapons, is poverty. So I think we've all heard there's no virtue in poverty, and people could be going through something difficult, and it doesn't have to be a life sentence either. A lot of times people that are underprivileged are the ones that make great things happen because they're resourceful, because they know what they've been through. I think most people can think of examples of like trust fund kids or rich kids or like kids of celebrities, how a lot of them, they don't have that grit to them, where they're not going to be able to achieve the level of success that their parents have because they haven't known what real struggle is, and I'm obviously speaking in general terms, but after poverty would be ill health, because when someone's sick, it discourages thinking. So I guess that's something else that the devil likes, is people that are complacent, people that don't like to think for themselves, people that don't like to question authority or question their reality, people that like to comply. So the devil likes people that comply. Let's move on. Who are your greatest enemies on earth? See what the devil says. All who inspire people to think and act on their own initiative are my enemies. Is it true that you use men who have great wealth? As I have already told you, poverty is always my friend, because it discourages independence of thought and encourages fear in the minds of men. Some wealthy men serve my cause, while others do me great damage, depending upon how the wealth is used. Now, this is interesting because I agree with that wholeheartedly, that just because someone has a lot of money doesn't mean that they're evil or that they're greedy or that they're selfish. Now, obviously, people that have a lot of money could do harm to people. There's no doubt about that as well. But I think money is more of a tool. And throughout this book, Napoleon Hill goes into how when people have good intentions and they have money, then they can actually impact the world in an amazing way by having advances in, the medical field, and advances in, having more libraries, better access to education, things like that. And Napoleon Hill, a lot of his books were derived not just from experience, but also from mastermind groups. And one person that was a mentor, a role model, so to speak, for him that he really looked up to and he did a lot of work journaling into and researching is Andrew Carnegie. And Andrew Carnegie said himself that the first half of his life he wants to spend it accumulating wealth, and the second half of his life he wants to give it away. And I think he gave away his money to a variety of causes, but I remember I mentioned libraries. I think he opened like 1,000 or 2,000 libraries or something like that in New York City, Carnegie Hall. Fun fact, it wasn't actually called Carnegie Hall when it opened because he's humble like that. He called it the Music Hall. And then after Andrew Carnegie died, that's when people changed the name from Music Hall to Carnegie Hall. So that's a fun fact. But let's move on to the next question. See what the devil has to say, eh? What about these boys and girls who are said to be on the road to hell? Are you in control of them? Well, I can answer that question only with a yes and no. I have corrupted the minds of the young by teaching them to drink and smoke, but they have me baffled through their tendency to think for themselves. So there we go again. The devil likes someone that's compliant. And you know what? Napoleon Hill, straight shooter. I'm not advocating any type of intoxication, but I think even sobriety can be a form of intoxication. And I think even sobriety could be an addiction on its own. And I think there are plenty of people that are sober that are very compliant. And seems like a compliant mind is also a very devilish mind. Now, if between the two of a very bad addiction versus sobriety, obviously sobriety is the better route to take. But it's like the phrase goes, like everything in moderation, including moderation, But he ended that answer with saying, young people baffle him with their tendency to think for themselves. So the devil doesn't want you to think for yourself. The devil's like, no, do what I say, period. And if there's companies, corporations that tend to control the narrative or control what people say or control, what information people are allowed to consume, seems like it's an agent of the devil, honestly. According to this book, and this is my third time reading it. So let's move on. Let's go down to this question. When I began this interview, I had you all wrong. I thought you were a fraud and a fake, but I see now that you are quite real and very powerful. Your apology is accepted, but you need not have bothered. Okay. That's like early 20th century talk. Continue. Millions of people have questioned my power, and I got most of them at the gate as they came over. I ask no person to believe in me. I prefer that people fear me. I am no beggar. I take what I want by cleverness and force. Begging people to believe is the business of my opposition, not mine. That's okay. I'm not religious, but I do believe in faith. And it's interesting how the devil would assume that God would want people to be beggars. And I don't know if that's true, but hey, the devil is very deceptive, so let's move on. I would not be able to look myself in the face again if I did not tell you here and now that you are the damnedest fiend ever to be turned loose on innocent people. I always had the wrong conception of you. I thought you were kind enough to let people live alone. You were merely tortured their souls after death. Now I learn from your own brazen confession that you destroy their right to freedom of thought and cause them to go through a living hell on earth. What do you have to say for that? So I guess Napoleon Hill, when he did this interview with the devil, thought that the devil only worked in the afterlife. But it seems like with this confession that the devil's working all the time. And if it is a real being, then it seems like a being that would transcend our dimension, and it would transcend time and space. And those things would be very different from the way that a human being would perceive time and space. So let's see what the devil has to say for that. I get what I want by exercising self-control. It is not so good for my own business, but I suggest an emulate me instead of criticizing me. Say that word right, guys? Emulate. Match or surpass. Okay. I suggest you emulate me instead of criticizing me. You call yourself a thinker, and you are. Otherwise, you would never have forced this interview on me. But you would never be the sort of thinker that frightens me unless you gain and exercise greater control over your own emotions. Okay, so basically, I guess the devil respects people that have control over their own emotions. Let us get away from personalities. I came here to learn more about you, not to discuss myself. Please go ahead and tell me of the many tricks you have deceived for gaining control of the human mind. What is your most powerful weapon just now? That is a difficult question to answer. I have so many devices for entering human minds and controlling them that it is difficult to say which are the most powerful. Right at the moment, I am trying to bring about another world war. My friends here in Washington are helping me involve America in the war. If I can start the world to killing on a wholesale basis, I shall be able to put into operation my favorite device for mind control. It is what you may call mass fear. Hey, what about COVID, eh? Mass fear? Is it a trick of science? I mean, maybe we should ask Napoleon Hill. Maybe we should look at this interview and think what the devil may say about what's going on in our world today. I used this device to bring about the other world war in 1914. I used it to bring about the economic depression in 1929. And if my opposition had not double-crossed me, I would now be in a position of every man, woman, and child in the world. You can see for yourself how near I came to world domination, the thing I have been struggling to attain for thousands of years. So hey, if there's any legitimacy in this interview, that's one thing that the devil's after. It's thirsty for our world. It's a world eater, you know. And you guys see Doctor Strange, that movie? Remember with Dormammu, the world eater? And Doctor Strange defeated him by putting him in a time loop. He would kill Strange over and over again, but it would loop him back to that same moment. And something that transcended time became a prisoner in a loop of time. And that's when they made the bargain. It's like, Dormammu, I've come here to bargain. The bargain was to be set free and leave the world alone. But I mean, if the devil is real, I don't know if he would be so honorable about any deals that he made. You know, I guess it would have to be a really powerful deal. You know. But let's get back to this. If you are very ingenious manipulator of the minds of people, is it your devilish business carried on only through people of high position and great influence? What does the devil say to that? Oh no, I use the minds of people in all walks of life. As a matter of fact, I prefer the type of person who makes no pretense of thinking. I can manipulate that sort of person without difficulty. I cannot control 98% of the people of the world if they all were skilled in thinking for themselves. All right. I guess if there's any message for you guys in this book, it's think for yourself. Question your reality. Question facts. Question the fact checkers. Question and think. Your mind is powerful beyond imagination. I think everybody can agree with that. And it's amazing how little people use it and how often people set their own limitations on their own brain of what their own brain is capable of. And I think a lot of people are also intimidated and they're scared to stand up against a crowd or to stand up and speak their voice or to say something that's kind of embarrassing or to say something that they might not find to be true. But I look at it like this. I did the mixed Bribes personality test and I'm a INTP. And INTPs have a lot of crazy ideas in a conversation. You know, it'll be like, what the heck is this guy talking about? I've had people say that to me before. It is what it is. And I look at it almost not selfishly, but like, hey, this is some idea. I'm bringing it out into a open forum conversation, whether I'm talking with one person or a group of people. Help me crystallize this idea so I can identify it as something that's good or something that's terrible. Next question. Drifting. Oh, we're done with that. Now we're going to drifting with the devil. This is important because in this book, what the devil tries to get people into is the habit of drifting. Okay. Let me see if this is going to work. I got to put this chat thing up, guys. I apologize. Hotkeys. See number padding Q, or quote, or 8. Alright, if it's not going to work, I apologize if I don't get back to you guys with this chatting. But what I'll do is I'll put it down like this. To chat. Really? I can't type it right here? Maybe I could do it from the internet. Read only. Alright, so it just went up. I don't even know if it's playing. It might just be playing on Twitch apparently, but whatever. I'm just going to put this down here so I can read the chat. Okay. Alright, sorry about that. Let's get back to the book. Tell me first about your most clever trick, the one you use to ensnare the greatest number of people. If you force me to give away this secret, it will mean my loss of millions of people now living in still greater numbers of millions of unborn. I beg you permit me passing this one question. Don't ask me this question, said the devil. The devil fears a mere humble human, eh? Is that right? It is not right, but it is true. You have no right to rob me of my most necessary tool of the trade. For millions of years I've dominated earthbound creatures through fear and ignorance. Now you come along and would destroy my use of these weapons by forcing me to tell how I use them. Did you not realize that you will break my grip on every person who heeds this confession? Are you forcing from me? Have you no mercy? Have you no sense of humor? Have you no sportsmanship? Look at that. The devil does not want to reveal this answer, this trick. Tell me about your most cleverest trick. That's what he's asking. So stop stalling and start confessing. Who are you to ask mercy of one whom would destroy if you could? Who are you to talk of sportsmanship and sense of humor? You, who would by your own confession have set up a living hell on earth, where you punish innocent people through fear and ignorance. As for minding my own business, that is just what I am doing when I force you to tell me how you control people through their own minds. My business if it can be called a business, is helping to unlock the doors of the self-made prisons in which men and women are confined because of the fears you have planted in their minds. Interesting. Interesting. Uh, Imagine if that was real. If the devil was this, you know, creature that transcended time and space and had the goal of extracting the life force energy out of humanity and would control them through fear and ignorance. It's kind of interesting. It spreads that and puts that fear in people's mind. Let's keep reading. But it's not just fear like fear of going to hell. Any type of fear. Come on. Okay, sorry. Finally, the devil's answer. My greatest weapon over human beings consists of two secret principles by which I gain control of their minds. I will speak first of the principle of habit, through which I silently enter the minds of people. By operating through this principle, I establish, I wish I could avoid using this word, the habit of drifting. When a person begins to drift on any subject, he is headed straight towards the gates of what you earthbound call hell. Drifting. Now, even the word drifting, I feel like in my life I have drifted before, and I do my best to not drift, but I think it's something that's common with all people. Describe all the ways in which you indulge people to drift. Define the word and tell us exactly what you mean by it. Okay. I could best define the word drift by saying that people who think for themselves never drift, while those who do little or no thinking for themselves are drifters. A drifter is one who permits himself to be influenced and controlled by circumstances outside of his own mind. He would rather let me occupy their mind and do his thinking for them than go to the trouble of thinking for himself. A drifter who is one who accepts whatever life throws at his way without making a protest or putting up a fight. He doesn't know what he wants from life and spends all his time getting just that. A drifter has lots of opinions, but they are none of his own. Most of them are supplied by me. A drifter is one who is too lazy mentally to use his own brain. That is the reason I take control of people's thinking and plant my own ideas in their minds. So there you go. You heard it right there, folks. That is what the devil does. Let's move on. I think I understand what a drifter is. Tell me the exact habits of people by which you induce them to drift through life. Start by telling me when and how you first gain control of a person's mind. My control over the mind of the human being is obtained while the person is young. Sometimes I lay the foundation for control of a mind before the owner of it is born. I love the way that in the early 20th century they would write English. Sometimes I lay the foundation for my control of a mind before the owner of it is born. Got it. By manipulating the minds of that person's parents, sometimes I go further back than that and prepare people for the control through what you earthbound call physical heredity. You see, therefore, I have two approaches to the mind of a person. Yes, go on. Describe these two doors by which you enter and control the minds of human beings. As I stated, I help to bring people into the world with weak brains by giving to them before birth as many as possible of the weaknesses of their ancestors. You call this principle physical heredity. So I guess if your relative got like diabetes or something, and then like you get diabetes, and then they get diabetes, maybe it's like that. After people are born, I make use of what you earthbound called environment as a means of controlling them. This is where the principle of habit enters. The mind is nothing more than the sum total of one's habits. One by one, I enter the mind and establish habits which lead finally to my absolute domination of the mind. All right, so while we read this, I think we can all make a little pact that we're not gonna let the devil occupy our mind or dominate our mind. Tell me of the most common habits by which you control the minds of people. That is one of my cleverest tricks. I enter the minds of people through thoughts which they believe to be their own. Those most useful to me are fear, superstition, greed, what's this word? Avarice, extreme greed, okay. Lust, revenge, anger, vanity, and plain laziness. Through one or more of these, I can enter any mind at any age, but I get my best results when I take charge of a mind while it is young. I am catching on to your methods. Now, let us go back to the habit of drifting. Tell us all about the habit, since you say it is your cleverest trick in controlling the minds of people. As I said before, I start people drifting during their youth. I induce them to drift through school without knowing what occupation they wish to follow in their life. Here I catch the majority of people. Habits are related. Drift in one direction and soon you'll be drifting in all directions. I also use environmental habits to give me a definite grip on my victims. All right. I see you make it your business to train children in the habit of drifting by inducing them to go through school without aim or purpose. Now tell me some of your other tricks with which you cause people to become drifters. Well, my second best trick in developing the habit of drifting is one that put into operation with the aid of parents and public school teachers and religious instructors. I warn you not to force me to mention this trick. Do not disclose this trick. If you do so, you will be hated by my coworkers, who will help me to use this trick. You will publish this conviction in book form. Your book will be barred from the public schools. It will be blacklisted by most of the religious leaders. It will be hidden from children by many parents. The newspapers will not dare give it reviews. My bad with the yawn. Millions of people will hate you for writing this book. In fact, no one will like you or your book except those who think. And you know how very few there are of this sort. My advice to you is to let me skip this description of my second best trick. We're not going to let the devil skip it. Nope. So, for my own good, you wish to withhold the description of your second best trick? No one will like my book except those who think, eh? Very well. Go ahead and answer. You'll regret this, Mr. Earthbound, but the joke is on you. By this mistake of yours, you will divert attention from me to yourself. My coworkers, of whom there are millions, will forget about me and hate you for uncovering my methods. Never mind about me. Tell me about this second best trick of yours with which you induce people to drift with you to hell. My second best trick is not second at all. It is first. It is first because without it, I never could have gained control of the minds of the youth. Parents, school teachers, religious instructors, and many other adults unknowingly serve my purpose by helping me to destroy in children the habit of thinking for themselves. They go about their work in various ways, never suspecting what they are doing to the minds of children, or the real cause of the children's mistakes. Huh, what do y'all think about that, eh? The devil really doesn't like people thinking for themselves. And he's saying that religious instructors, parents, school teachers can unknowingly serve the devil's purpose and the devil's goal and aim, which is to make people compliant, make people blindlessly obedient, and not think for themselves. People want to just give away their minds and their mental power. And I think that's kind of interesting. Even with thinking about artificial intelligence, like artificial intelligence is really only powered because of our brains. Like AI has to plug itself into the brains of people to actually work. Now, will it get to a point where it's more advanced than us? I really hope not. But as of now, it requires people's minds and brain power to make it work. So our minds are powerful, and when people just throw them away, then they get consumed by other I guess, beings, according to this, like the devil and other organizations. Like, how many people have protested for something or voted for something and they didn't even know what they were voting for? They didn't even know what they were protesting for. They were just herded along. They were just brought into that situation and they were used instead of them using their mind. So it's pretty interesting. And I like how they mentioned school as well, because when I was in high school and middle school, we were taught to pass a test. I don't remember learning how to think for yourself, besides maybe in philosophy class. And everything else was do A, B, C, and D correctly, and you'll get an A. I don't know how valuable all the stuff I learned in school has helped me in the real world. I don't know if back when I was in school, if they taught kids how to manage money, how to find self-awareness, how to operate in the real world. I don't know if these type of things, or thinking for themselves, I don't know if these type of things would be, if implemented in school, would make a difference, but I think so. I think so. I hate standardized tests. Those things drive me nuts. No wonder. It's like, Jesus, like, these standardized tests, definitely the work of the devil. Hated those things. Scantrons. Let's go back to these questions, eh? I can hardly believe you. I have always believed that children's best friends were were closest to them. Their parents, their school teachers, and their religious instructions. Where would children go for dependable guidance, if not to those who have charge over them? That is where my cleverness comes in. There is an exact explanation of how I control 98% of the people of the world. I take possession of the people during their youth, before they come in possession of their own minds, by using those who are in charge of them. I especially need the help of those who give children their religious instruction, because it is here that I break down independent thought and start people on the habit of drifting. By confessing their minds with unprovable ideas concerning a world of which they know nothing, it is here also that I plant in the minds of children the greatest of all fears, the fear of hell. Okay? I feel like people that went to super religious churches did have a deep fear of hell. For me, I didn't grow up super religious, but did grow up Christian. My parents went to church and stuff. But it was never like such a fear, because for me, hell was always like, if it's real, that would suck, but it's not right now. That's later, and that's if I go there, because I'm a good person. I'm going to go to heaven. And the other part of me was like agnostic. Like, I can't prove that it's real. I can't prove that it's not real. So why stress about it? Why fear it? But there's definitely a lot of people that do have that fear, and I think if someone doesn't fear hell, then the devil's still getting value from you if you're super irrationally fearful about something else, And I see that happening now in 2020. People are scared about everything, and it gets to a point where you don't feel bad anymore. It's like when you're crying and crying all the time, it loses like the value or the potency of when someone is scared. But out of all the tools that the devil uses to control people, fear and ignorance was his top two that he mentioned. So if someone's ignorant, or how about this? If they're fearful, they lose all sense of reason. And a lot of times people are fearful because they're ignorant, and because that they're too dumb to face the truth, or they're too much in a herd mentality, or they're too caught up in an echo chamber where they can't see the light because they're just surrounded by so much fucking bull shit. But sorry, I'm ranting. Next question. I understand that it is easy for you to frighten children with threats of hell, but how do you continue to make them fear you and your hell after you grow up and learn to think for themselves? Children grow up, but they don't always learn to think for themselves. Once I capture the mind of a child through fear, I weaken that child's ability to reason and to think for himself. And that weakness goes with the child all throughout their life. Is it not taking unfair advantage of human beings by contaminating his mind before he comes into full possession of it? Everything is fair that I can use to further my ends. I have no foolish limitations of right and wrong. Might is right with me. I use every known human weakness to gain and control the human minds. I understand your devilish nature. Now let's get back to the further discussion, your methods inducing people to drift to hell here on earth. From your confessions, I see that you take charge of children while their minds are young and pliable. Is this word, guys? Easily bent. Tell me more about how you use parents, teachers, and religious leaders to ensnare people into drifting. Now, ensnare, I remember, was an Elder Scrolls move you could do, and it's basically these claws that come up from the ground and they hold someone in place. One of my favorite tricks is to coordinate the efforts of parents and religious instruction so that they work together and help me destroy the child's power to think for themselves. I use many religious instructors to undermine the courage and power of independent thought of children by teaching them to fear me, but I use parents to aid the religious leaders in this great work of mine. In what other ways do you use parents to convert children into drifters? I cause children to become drifters by following the example of their parents, most of whom I have already taken over and bound eternally to my cause. In some parts of the world, I gain mastery over children's mind and subdue their willpower in exactly the same way that men break and subdue animals of lower intelligence. It makes no difference to me how a child's will is subdued, as long as it fears something. It will enter its mind through that fear. I will enter its mind through that fear and limit that child's power to think independently. Wow. Is that the end of that question? Wow, guys. So, just for fun, let's pretend that this interview is 100% legit. Like Napoleon Hill had a deal with God to have an interview with the devil, and this was all real. Fear something, not just hell. Fear anything. It's basically like a portal to let the devil enter one's mind. See, it says right here, it makes no difference to me how a child's will is subdued as long as it fears something. I will enter its mind through that fear and limit the child's power to think independently. And when people are fearful, they lose all sense of reason. Wow. Use our brains, eh? It's the message. We got to use our brains. We got to think for ourselves. We got to question what's in front of us. It seems that you go out of your way to keep people from thinking. Yes, accurate thought is death to me. I cannot exist in the minds of those who think accurately. I do not mind people thinking as long as they think in terms of fear, discouragement, hopelessness, and destructiveness. When they begin to think in constructive terms of faith, courage, hope, and definiteness of purpose, they immediately become allies of my opposition and are therefore lost to me. All right, so look, the devil's like, all right, if I'm going to be your boss, I'm going to let you think. But you're only allowed to think fearful thoughts, discouragement. You could be hopeless, and if you want to be destructive, go right ahead. But if you're going to be faithful, courageous, hopeful, or have definiteness of purpose, then you're allied with God, which the devil calls his opposition. I was under the impression that the purpose of all schooling was to help children to think. That may be the purpose of schooling, but the system in most schools of the world does not carry out the purpose. School children are taught to develop and aren't taught to develop and use their own minds, but to adapt and use thoughts of others. This sort of schooling destroys the capacity for independent thought, except in the few rare cases where children rely so definitely upon their own willpower that they refuse to allow others to do their thinking. Accurate thought is the business of my opposition, not mine. Okay? So I guess according to this, when we're talking about powers that be and big companies and big platforms that would rather you not think for yourself, that would rather you not, I guess, read from a variety of sources, then they themselves act as devils or the devil. Because the devil doesn't want you to think, the devil doesn't want you to do nothing but drift and be scared and be stupid. So people that think for themselves can definitely be labeled as stupid. They could definitely be stupid at times. And if they're arrogant, then that's a whole nother level of stupid. But people that just comply and don't have any critical thinking, in my personal opinion, are way stupider than someone that's like gonna think for themselves and look into it for themselves. Do you claim for your cause all those who are bound by the habit of drifting? No, drifting is only one of my tricks, through which I take over the power of independent thought. Before a drifter becomes my permanent property, I must lead him on and ensnare him with another trick. I will tell you about this other trick after I finish describing my methods of converting people into drifters. Do you mean you have a method by which you can cause people to drift so far away from self-determination that they can never save themselves? Yes, a definite method, and it is so effective it never fails. You guys ready to see what this method is? Let's get to it. Do I understand you claim your method is so powerful your opposition cannot reclaim those whom you have permanently ensnared through drifting? I claim just that. Do you think I would control so many people if my opposition could prevent me? Nothing could stop me from controlling people except people themselves. Oh, pause. What did the devil just say to Napoleon Hill? Nothing can stop me from controlling people except people themselves. It's a door. The devil wants to come in, but you have to allow it in. And it seems like fear is one way that allows him in. Nothing can stop me except the power of accurate thought. People who think accurately do not drift on any subject. They recognize the power of their own minds. Moreover, they take over that power and yield it to no person or influence. Go ahead and tell me more of the methods by which you cause people to drift to hell with you. I cause people to drift on every subject through which I can control independent thought and action. I take the subject of health, for example. I cause most people to eat too much food and the wrong sort of food. This leads to indigestion and destroys the power of accurate thought. If public schools and churches taught children more about proper eating, they would do my cause irreparable damage. You know what? I'm going to go on a 20-second rant about the current world we live in when it comes to healthcare and fear and the combination of those two things. We listen to people that tell us to be scared and to tell us to be taking these different, medications or vaccines, but those same people don't teach people about healthy eating, healthy exercising, or anything like that. So I think if you're going to take real advice from someone, you need a full round picture, right? I just think that it takes a combination of those things to be healthy. I don't think if you're super overweight, eating unhealthy, thinking bad thoughts, being super self-hating, and just being a POS, and then you want to go ahead and take medicine that all of a sudden you're healthy again. No, it's a combination of all of those things, getting right mentally, getting right physically, eating right, and then if you get sick too, then medicine on top of that. All right, I went over the 20-second rant. I probably didn't make much sense with it, but I feel like I made at least half sense. So let's keep moving. I conclude from what you say that drifting and procrastination are the same. Is that true? Yes, that is correct. Any habit which causes one to procrastinate, to puff out, reaching a definite decision leads to the habit of drifting. Says the devil, I cause people to allow me to do their thinking for them because they are too lazy and too indifferent to think for themselves. Laziness plus indifference equals procrastination, which equals drifting. No doubt you would, that you would say from being Sorry about that. But let us come back to Earth. Tell me now, what about drifting is doing to us as a nation here in the United States? Frankly, I may as well tell you that I hate the United States, as only the devil can hate. That is interesting. What is the cause of this hatred? The cause was born on July 4th, 1776, when 56 men signed a document which destroyed my chances of controlling the nation. You know the document as the Declaration of Independence. Had it not been for the influence of the damnable document, I would now have a dictator running the country, and I would stop this right to free speech and independent thought that is threatening my rule on earth. Huh. Interesting. Interesting. So, I guess, according to this, those that are against free speech have been poisoned in some way by the devil. Because clearly, the devil is not a fan of free speech, and the devil is not a fan of independent thought. So those people that are super compliant and they just give their mind away and don't think for themselves, they're basically a pawn of the devil. Now, this is not me saying this directly. If you think that's not accurate, don't at me, because I'll read it, sure, why not? Go right ahead. But according to this interview, that's exactly what's going on. Am I to understand from what you say that the nations controlled by self-appointed dictators belong in your camp? There is no self-appointed dictators. I appoint them all. Moreover, I manipulate them and direct them in their work. Nations run by my dictators know what they want, and they take it by force. Look at what I have done throughout Mussolini in Italy. Look what I'm doing through Hitler in Germany. Look at what I'm doing through Stalin in Russia. My dictators run those nations for me because people have subdued through the habit of drifting. My dictators do not drift. That is why they rule over millions of people under their control. Yes, they don't drift. And from a couple questions earlier, the devil does allow a few exceptions with the law of independent thought. The devil doesn't want you to do any thinking, but it's okay if you're thinking in terms of fear, discouragement, and all these things. So some of these rulers might have crazy ideas such as finite resources, such as greed, where they want it, or they're power hungry, or they are scared themselves and they feel like I got to destroy others to preserve myself. Stalin was responsible for, I believe, over 10 million deaths. And when I read the Gulag Archipelago, it really had me scared straight as to how much of a piece of shit communism is, and how it gives full power to the country and state and strips people away from their rights and their freedoms. And that is freaking horrible that some people are for that. They obviously have never lived in it. And they obviously need to start doing more thinking for themselves and reading some literature outside of their echo chambers, like the Gulag Archipelago, for example. When things are theorized, they could be very different from when they're in reality. And there's no, like, what's the phrase? You could be a communist in a free nation, but you can't be a free individual in a communist nation. You can't speak your voice. Hitler in Germany, Mussolini in Italy. Yeah. I mean, if the devil was going to infiltrate any minds of people, wouldn't he do it to those people? Right? Wouldn't they be a puppet for him? I don't know. I'm again rambling. Let's move on. What would happen if Mussolini, Stalin, and Hitler turned traitors and disavowed you and your rule? That will not happen because I have them too well bribed. I am paying each of them with a sop of his own vanity by making him believe he is acting on his own account. That is another trick of mine. Okay? Let us come back to the United States and learn something about what we are doing to convert people into the habit of drifting. Right now, I am paving the way for a dictatorship by sowing the seeds of fear and uncertainty in the minds of people. Whoa, 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 whoa. What did the devil just say there? Right now, I am paving the way for a dictatorship by sowing the seeds of fear and uncertainty. Fear and uncertainty. Sowing seeds of fear and uncertainty. What if the devil started sowing these seeds, and just like a tree, it takes years and decades to grow, and the seeds of fear and uncertainty in the minds of people makes people willingly give up their rights. They give up their freedoms for quote unquote safety. Now the problem is people can say this is for your safety, but it's really not for your safety. That's the problem. People are fearful and they have uncertainty. So when the nation is full of fear and uncertainty, that allows for a dictatorship, whether a monarch or an oligarch, to come into place. When, what does the saying go? When the government is fearful of its people, there's freedom. When the people are fearful of their government, there's tyranny. But tyrants learn from the past, and tyrants can evolve, and anyone that thinks that a tyrant at the level of the people we're talking about in this book are dumb, they're dumb. Because these people are not dumb. They could be wrong, they could be evil, but they're not dumb. And they may learn from their past, or learn from past dictators, and say, instead of making them fear us, what if we made them fear something else? And then right from under them, we'll take the rights away. Interesting. And this book was written in the 1930s, 1940s. I would love to know what this guy would have to say about our world today. When you say leads me to the conclusion that drifting is a weakness which inevitably ends in failure, whether among individuals or nations. Is that your claim? Drifting is the most common cause of failure in every walk of life. I can control anyone whom I can induce in the form of habit of drifting on any subject. The reason for this is twofold. First, the drifter is just so much putty in my hands to be molding into whatever pattern I choose, because drifting destroys the power of individual initiative. Second, the drifter cannot help from my opposition, because the opposition is not attracted to anything so soft and useless. Is that why few people are wealthy, while the majority of people are poor? That's exactly the reason. Poverty, like physical illness, is a contagious disease. You find it always among the drifters, never among those who know what they want and are determined to get just that. It may mean something to you when I call to your attention the fact that non-drifters, whom I do not control, and those who possess most of the wealth in the world happen to be the same people. I have always understood that money was the root of all evil, and that poor and the meek would inherit heaven, while the wealthy would pass into your hands. What do you have to say of this claim? Men who know how to get the material things of life generally know how to keep out of the hands of the devil as well. The ability to acquire things is contagious. Drifters acquire nothing except that which no one else wants. If more people had definite aims and stronger desires for material and spiritual riches, I would have fewer victims. So I like that answer. If more people had definite aims and stronger desires for material and spiritual riches. Now, I'm glad that he put in that spiritual riches, because a lot of people that have material riches, quote unquote, they don't have the other one down. And I think the other one is actually more important. That is exactly the reason poverty... Okay, we got that. I've always understood that money was the root of all... Oh, we already got this. My bad. Go ahead and describe a typical drifter. Give your description point by point so I can recognize a drifter when I see him. Alright guys, so how does the devil describe someone that's a drifter? And if you're just tuning in, a drifter is basically a way of living through life, just kind of putting a blinder to your eyes, getting in a tube and going down a stream and just letting it take you wherever you want with no purpose or meaning. It's one of the devil's tools to control that person's mind and extract the life force energy from them. First thing you will notice about a drifter is his total lack of major purpose in life. He will be conspicuous by his lack of self-confidence. He will never accomplish anything requiring thought and effort. He spends all he earns and more too, if he can get credit. He will be sick and ailing for some real or imaginary cause, and calling to high heaven if he suffers the least physical pain. He will have little or no imagination. He will lack enthusiasm and initiative to begin anything that he is not forced to undertake. He will plainly express his weakness by taking the line of least resistance whenever he can do so. He will be ill-tempered and lacking in control over his emotions. His personality will be without magnetism, and it will not attract other people. He will have opinions on everything, but accurate knowledge of nothing. He may be the jack of all trades, but good at none. He will neglect to cooperate with those around him, even though on whom he must depend for food and shelter. He will make the same mistakes over and over again, never profiting by failure. He will be narrow-minded and intolerant on all subjects, ready to crucify those who may disagree with him. He will expect everything of others, but be willing to give little or nothing in return. He may begin many things, but he will complete nothing. He will be loud in his condemnation of his government, but he will never tell you definitely how it could be improved. He will never reach decisions on anything if he can avoid it. And if he is forced to decide, he will reverse himself at the first opportunity. He will eat too much, exercise too little. He will take a drink of liquor if someone else will pay for it. He will gamble if he can do so, on the cuff. He will criticize others who are succeeding in their chosen calling. In brief, the drifter will work harder to get out of thinking than most others working in earning a good living. He will tell a lie rather than admit his own ignorance on any subject. If he works for others, he will criticize them to their backs and flatter them to their face. You have given me a graphic description of a drifter. Please now describe the non-drifter so that I may recognize him on sight. Alright guys, so we just got the drifter explained. Now we're going to learn what's the non-drifter. And the non-drifter doesn't always mean something is good for all of humanity either, but it's definitely something that's preferred for yourself. The only reason why I'm saying that is because earlier in this interview, the devil mentioned that some of his prime puppets, like Stalin and Mussolini and characters like this, were non-drifters. So let's read on. But non-drifters are also those that the devil doesn't prefer. So it's interesting, the difference between those two. I guess not everything's so black and white. The first sign of a non-drifter is this. He is always engaged in doing something definite, though some well-organized plan which is definite. He has a major goal in life towards which he is always working, and many minor goals, all of which lead towards a central scheme. The tone of his voice, the quickness of his step, the sparkle in his eyes, the quickness of his decisions clearly mark him as a person who knows exactly what he wants and is determined to get it, no matter how long it may take or what price he may pay. If you ask him questions, he gives you direct answers and never falls back on evasion or resorts to subverge. He extends many favors to others, but accepts favors sparingly or not at all. He will be found up front whether he's playing a game or fighting in a war. If he does not know the answers, he will say so frankly. He has a good memory, never offering an alibi for his shortcomings. He never blames others for his mistakes, no matter if they deserve the blame. He used to be known as a go-getter, but in modern times, meaning 1930s, he is called a go-giver. I like it. You will find him running the biggest business in town, living on the best street, driving the best automobile, and making his presence felt wherever it happens to be. He is an inspiration to all who come in contact with his mind. The major distinguishing feature of a non-drifter is this. He has a mind of his own, and he uses it for all purposes. He has a mind of his own, and he uses it for all purposes. Now, someone like Stalin and Mussolini, the devil mentioned, are non-drifters, but they work for the devil. So when you look at this, this is like an oxymoron, or maybe it's just not completely aligned, but based on what I'm thinking is those type of characters, those evil dictators, they are non-drifters in the sense that they'll do whatever it takes to get their end goal. But over here where it's like he has a mind of his own and use it for all purposes, it seems like those type of characters don't use it for all purposes, but they use it for the same purpose that the devil has, which is to turn others into drifters. So a non-drifter can be an agent of the devil if that non-drifter's purpose in some way is to turn others into drifters. I think I answered that pretty well. Is the non-drifter born with some mental, physical, or spiritual advantage not available to drifters? No. The major difference between the drifter and the non-drifter is something equally available to them both. It is simply the right of each to use his own mind and to think for themselves. What brief message would you send to a typical drifter if you wish to cure him of this evil habit? I would, Amish? I would admonish him to wake up and give. Give what? Some form of service useful to as many people as possible. So the non-drifter is supposed to give, is he? Yes. He is expected to get. And he must give before he gets. Some people doubt that you exist. I wouldn't worry about that. Those who are ready to be converted from the habit of drifting will recognize the authenticity of this interview by its soundness of counsel. The others are not worth the trouble it will take to convert them. Sure, you can't help someone that's not willing to help themselves. Period. Go ahead now and confess why you are powerless to stop me from forcing this confession from you. I want your confession for aid and comfort to victims of yours who I intend to release from your control the moment they read your confession. I am powerless to influence or control you because you have found the secret approach to my kingdom. You know I exist only in the minds of people who have fear. You know that I control only the drifters who neglect to use their own mind. You know that my hell is here on earth and that not in the world that comes after death. And you know also that drifters supply all the fire I use in my hell. You know that I am the principle or form of energy which expresses the negative side of matter and energy. And that I am not a person with a forked tongue or a spiked tail. You have become my master because you have mastered all your fears. Lastly, you know that you can release all of my earthbound victims who you contact, and this definite knowledge is the blow with which you will deal me the greatest damage. I cannot control you because you have discovered your own mind, and you have taken charge of it. There now, Mr. Earthbound, that confession should feed your vanity to the bursting point. That last art was unnecessary, devil. Knowledge of this sort I have used to master you does not contaminate itself with vulgar indulgence and vanity. Truth is the one and only thing in the world that can stand ridicule. Now, let us continue with your confession. What is wrong with the principle of flattery? You use it, do you not? Do I use it? Man alive, flattery is one of the most useful weapons. With this deadly instrument, I slay the big ones and the little ones. Your admission interests me. Go ahead now and tell me how you make use of flattery. I make use of it in so many ways. It is difficult to know where it begins. I warn you, before I answer in detail, that publishing my answers will bring down an avalanche of ridicule on your head for bringing up the questions. So there we go. If anybody has any ridicule about this video because I'm reading it, then it's obviously coming from the devil. Go ahead with your confession and start strictly to the subject and stick strictly to the subject of flattery. No more side remarks, and no more, look at this word, guys, facetieniness. All right, guys. 11:30. I woke up at 7 a.m. today. I worked pretty much all day. Excuse my yawns. Tell me all about your use of flattery and gaining control over people. All right, so let's learn how the devil uses flattery to control people. Flattery is a bait of uncomparable value to all those who wish to control over others. It has powerful pulling qualities because it operates through two of the most common human weaknesses, vanity and egotism. There is a certain amount of vanity and egotism in everyone. In some people, these qualities are so pronounced they literally serve as a rope by which one may be bound. The best of all ropes is flattery. Flattery is the chief bait through which men seduce women. Sometimes, in fact, frequently, women use the same bait to gain control over men, especially men who cannot be mastered through sex appeal. I teach its use to both men and women. Flattery is the chief bait for which my agents weave their way into a confidence of people, from whom they procure information needed to carry on warfare. Whether anyone stops to feed his vanity or flattery, I move in and begin to build another drifter. Non-drifters are not easily flattered. I inspire people to use flattery in every human relation where its use is possible, because those who are influenced by it become easy victims of the drifting habit. Can you control anyone who is amenable to flattery? Yes, very easily. As I have already told you, flattery is the most important in alluring people into the habit of drifting. At what age are people most susceptible to flattery? Age has nothing to do with it. One's susceptibility to flattery, people respond to it in one way or another from time they become conscious of their own existence until they die. Through what motive can women be more easily flattered? Their vanity. Tell a woman she is pretty, or that she wears clothes well. What motives is most effective in harpooning men? Egoism, with a capital E. Tell men that he has a strong Herculean body and that he is a great business tycoon and he will purr like a cat and smile like an opossum. After that, you know what happens. Are men like that? Oh no. 2 out of every 100 have their egotism so thoroughly under control that even an expert flatterer couldn't get under their skins with a double-edged butcher knife. Is that all there is to the business of flattery? No, that is only the technique. Then comes the motive of a woman uses to lure. The type of woman you perhaps have in mind never sells a man herself, or anything she can give him. Instead, she sells him on his own egotism. Is that all women use when they wish to flatter men? That is the most effective thing they use. It works when sex appeal fails. Tell me of some of your other tricks with which you can cause people to drift in life. One of my most effective devices is failure. The majority of people begin to drift as soon as they are met with opposition, and not 1 out of 10,000 will keep on trying after failing 2 or 3 times. So it is your business to induce people to fail whenever you can, is that correct? You have it right. Failure breaks down one's morale, destroys self-confidence, subdues enthusiasm, dulls imagination, and drives away definiteness of purpose. Without these qualities, no one could permanently succeed in any undertaking. The world has produced thousands of inventors with the ability to superior to late Thomas Edison, but these men have never been heard of. While the name of Edison will go marching on because Edison converted failures into stepping stones to achievement, while others used it as an alibi for not producing results. Okay, so let's flip that around to know what we should do. Failure breaks down one's morale, destroys self-confidence. Okay, so practice self-confidence. Do things that encourage self-confidence. Do things that make you confident. Subdues enthusiasm. Okay, so have enthusiasm. And I think by being confident and taking action, doing things, and bouncing back, that could create enthusiasm. It could create imagination. So it's like a chain reaction. And definiteness of purpose can be like the North Star. Okay. If I understand you correctly, you claim there is virtue in failure. That that does not seem reasonable. Why do you try to induce people to fail if there is virtue in failure? There is no inconsistency in my claims. The appearance of inconsistency is due to your lack of understanding. Failure is not virtue only when it does not lead one to quit trying and begin drifting. I induce as many people as I can to fail as often as possible for the reason that 1 out of 10,000 will keep on trying after failure 2 or 3 times. I am not concerned about a few who convert failures into stepping stones because they belong to my opposition anyways. They are the non-drifters, and therefore they are beyond my reach. Your explanation clears up the matter. Now go ahead and tell me some of your other tricks in which you allure people into the habit of drifting. One of my most effective tricks is known to you as propaganda. One of my most effective tricks is known to you as propaganda. Propaganda. So propaganda, if you break that word apart, it's agenda. Agenda. So propaganda, a lot of people think it's fake, or it's lies. True, but not all the time. Propaganda will use truth if it aligns with their agenda, whoever is distributing the propaganda. So propaganda is a mixture of truth, things that are half-baked truths, and things that are straight out lies. Propaganda, prop and agenda. So propaganda, it's a trick of the devil. This is an instrument of greatest value to me in setting people to murdering one another under the guise of war. The cleverness of this trick consists mainly of the suitably with which you use it. I mix propaganda with the news of the world. I have it taught in public schools and private schools. I see that it finds its way into the pulpit. I color moving pictures with it. I see that it enters every home where there is a radio. I inject it into billboards, newspapers, radio advertising. I spread it in every place of business where people work. I use it to fill the divorce courts and make it serve to destroy businesses and industries. It is my chief instrument for starting runs on banks. Propaganda. In 2020 on social media? Absolutely. My propagandists cover the world so thoroughly that I can start epidemics of disease, turn loose the dogs of war, or throw business into a panic at will. Wow. Is the devil alive? Is the devil dead? Is the devil real? If it is alive, then in 2020, it's definitely spewing some of its tricks, huh? It's definitely spitting out all this propaganda. And it's making people fearful, and it's also making people ignorant. People are caught up in echo chambers. And with social media's excessive amount of censoring, it makes it hard to have real open-ended discussions. It makes it like this way or the highway, and it's very fascinating how mainstream media has gotten away with countless lies. It's just, and they never own up to it. I would love to see some of these stations and corporations say, you know what, we messed up. We said this one thing, or we did this one investigation, didn't happen to be true. We said it was true, but it wasn't true, and we apologize. But the fact that they don't even do that, it makes it not trustworthy, and that's why their ratings are down, because people don't want that. And people are not as dumb as they think they are. So, propaganda is used in business for the purpose of discouraging competition. Employers use it to gain advantage over their employees. The employees retaliate by using it to gain advantage over their employers. In fact, it is used so universally and thorough, such a smooth and beautiful streamlined technique, that it looks harmless even when it's detected. Yeah, some people welcome the propaganda. Some people love it, you know. And regardless of what people think about COVID, I remember watching a Bass Pro Shop Santa commercial, and it was the most cringy video that I've seen in a while. You know, at least top 10, you know. I'm sure there's other cringe, but holy moly, that was super cringe. With Santa being behind glass, wearing a face shield, everyone wearing these masks, and just so dystopian and just so fear ridden with everything. It's disgusting. It really is disgusting. And I think a lot of people are getting sick of it. A lot of people are just ready to live their lives, you know? It's a choice, fear or love. Like Bill Hicks said, you know? Life is like a ride at an amusement park. It goes up and down. It has thrills and chills. It's very loud and it's fun for a while. But a lot of people have been on this ride and they think it's real. But it's just a ride. You can either be scared of the ride or you can enjoy the ride and make the best of it. So I think people need to be a little bit more willing to not be told what to do, so to speak, and not be programmed to be just fear. Like, how many people are just into fear porn, you know, nowadays? It's just, I don't know. I'm rambling again. I'm sorry. It's just some things that have been going on this year. Like, it's hard to describe with words because there's a lot of doublethink, a lot of just BS, some truth, some fake, some just. It's been crazy. But we got more things to be grateful for. And I think that's what it comes down to. It's maintaining that perspective. And the opposition to the devil is faith, hope, courage. And if you want to get out of the habit of drifting, it's to get out and give and be valuable for other people. And I could say that one thing that is valuable for other people is helping people be less fearful and also making people's day better. You know, it could be as simple, just nice conversation. You know, I'm the worst comedian because I'm not a comedian. However, I do try to make people laugh. There. I said it. Not always funny, but sometimes funny. I am a fan of memes. I have a great sense of humor. And if I can make someone laugh, I feel like I'm doing my part. Not everything in life needs to be like a comedy show, but I think when people are laughing, it makes the day a little bit easier. All right, so let's go back to this. What is fear of the devil except propaganda? You have not observed my technique very carefully, or you would have seen that I am the world's greatest propagandist. I never attain an end but direct, open means by which I achieve thought, subversions, and subdubly. What do you suppose I am using when I plant negative ideas in the minds of men and gain control of them through what they believe to be their own ideas? What would you call that except cleverness of all forms of propaganda? Surely you're not going to tell me that you destroy people to help without realizing. Surely you are not going to tell me that you destroy people through their own help without their realizing what you are doing. That is exactly what I wish you to understand. Moreover, I will show you exactly how the trick is performed. Right, so let's go down this one. What do you use as a bribe, Mr. Devil? I use many things, all of them pleasant things the individual covets. I use the same sort of bribes that individuals use when they bribe one another. That is, I use for bribes the things people most want. My best bribes are these: love, the thirst for sex expression, covetousness for money, the obsession desire to gain something for nothing, like gambling, vanity in women, egotism in men, desire to be the master of others, desire for intoxicants and narcotics, desire for self-expression through words and deeds, desire to intimidate others, desire for perception of life after death, desire to be a hero or heroine, desire for physical food. And now we got desire for clout. We got a lot of people that just they love attention, you know, and I get it that it's a business to an extent, but I think people shouldn't sacrifice their values just for attention, you know, and I think that comes with maturity. You know, 10 years from now, I'll be a lot more mature than I am now, but I feel I'm a lot more mature than I was 10 years ago, for example. What happens when you enter the mind of a person who is not yet in the habit of drifting but belongs in the 98% class as a potential drifter? I go to work immediately to occupy as much of that person's mind as I can master. If the individual's greatest weakness is a desire for money, I begin to dangle coins before him, figuratively speaking. I intensify his desire and induce him to go after money. Then, when he gets near it, I snatch it away from him. This is an old trick of mine. After that trick has been repeated a few times, the poor fellow gives in and quits. Then I take over a little more spaces in my mind and fill him with the fear of poverty. That is my best mind filler. Yes, I admit your method is very clever, but what happens if the victim fools you and gets his hand on a lot of money? You don't fill his mind with fear of poverty then, do you? No, I don't. I take over the space by filling it with something which serves my purpose just as well. My victim converts his desire for money into a large sum. I start overfeeding him with the thing which he can buy with. For example, I cause him to stuff himself with rich foods. This slows down his thinking capacity, endangers his heart, and starts him on the road to drifting. Then I pester him with the intestinal poisoning through the surplus of food he eats. That also slows down his thinking and gives him a nasty disposition. So food and sex are two of your for sure fire baits, is that correct? Yes. With these two lures, I could take over the majority of my victims, and then there is the desire for money. I am beginning to think that wealth is more dangerous than poverty if your story is to be believed. That altogether depends on who has the wealth and how it was acquired. See, that's really important. I gotta stop right there because that's so important. It's not like the rich people are all evil and the poor people are all virtuous. It's a mixture. There's good and evil rich people, and there's good and evil poor people. But when someone is poor, if they have that fear especially, they're more receptive to being a drifter. Where if somebody is wealthy and they're not going to have the fear of poverty, but the devil can get to them in other ways. That all depends on who has the wealth and how it was acquired. That answer right there. What has the manner in which money is acquired to do with the being blessing or a curse? Okay, so that's the question. He's asking the devil, what has the manner in which money is acquired to do with its being a blessing or a curse? Everything. If you don't believe me, take a look at those who acquire a large amount of money quickly. Without time, I get wisdom along with it, and observe how they use it. Why do you suppose rich men's sons seldom equal the achievements of their fathers? I'll teach you why. It is because they have become deprived of self-discipline, which comes from being forced to work. Look into the records of moving picture stars or athletes who suddenly find themselves in possession of big money and hero worship and praise from the public. Observe how quickly I move in on them and take them over in many cases, mainly through sex, gambling, food, and liquor. With this, I catch and I control the biggest and the best of people as soon as they get their hands on big money. What about those who acquire money slowly by rendering some form of useful service? Are they easily snared too? Oh, I get them all right, but I generally have to change my bait. Some of them want one thing and others want something else. Where my purpose is best served, I see to it that they get what they want most. But I manage to wrap up the package something that they don't want. The thing I give them is the definite thing that makes them drifters. Okay, so basically the devil has a lot of bait he'll throw out, and what he wants to do is convert them into drifters and suppress independent thought. It's like people that are fearful of money. Once they get money, they don't have that fear anymore, so then he's throwing other bait at them. Being gluttonous, overeating will convert them to the habit of drifting, too much sex, etc. You lure people on through their natural desires, but you slip your deadly poison into the object of those desires wherever you can. Now you're catching on. You see I play both ends against the middle, so to speak. From all you say, I infer that you cannot induce a non-drifter to help you gain control of his mind by baiting him with your bribes. Is that correct? That is exactly correct. I can and I do interest non-drifters in my bribe because I use for the purpose of bribery the things all people naturally desire. But the non-drifter resembles a fish that steals the bait from your hook but refuses to take the hook. The non-drifter takes from life whatever he wants, but he takes it on his own terms. The drifter takes whatever he can get, but he takes what he gets on my terms. Stating the matter another way, the non-drifter borrows money from a legitimate bank if he wants it and pays a legitimate rate of interest. The drifter goes to a pawn shop, hawks his watch, and pays a suicidal rate of interest for a loan. Now, I'm beginning to better understand your technique. You bribe your victims through their natural desires and lead them astray while you induce them to become drifters. If they respond to your lure, if they refuse to respond, you plant the seeds of fear in their minds or trap them through some form of misfortune and hogtie them while they are down. Is that your method? That's exactly the way I work. Clever, don't you think? Which do you prefer to serve as your propagandist, the young or the old? The young, of course. They can be influenced by most bribes more easily than people of mature judgment. Moreover, they have longer to remain in my service. Okay, interesting. So, if the young could be used more as propaganda machines, or not machines, but like mouthpieces for propaganda, everyone has their opinions and everyone has their things that they are quote unquote protesting for in 2020. I think everybody on all spectrums should be asking themselves and their peers this question: where is the evidence? Where is the facts? Where is the logic? Where is the statistics? Where is the laws and policies to prove what I am protesting is legitimate? Because if someone is protesting something and it doesn't have truth to back it, then it's just protesting bull shit. It's just straight bullshit. So wherever you lie, if you want to sharpen your, whether it's political stance, sharpen your facts, sharpen your reason, because silencing people and trying to manipulate people through emotions is not a good thing. It's not effective, and I think it's dangerous. And I think someone that is pushing bullshit and lies is a drifter, according to this, and is trying to convert others into being a drifter. Don't think for yourself. You're wrong. Believe me. This is it. And I think a lot of people are in echo chambers, but man, I wish I wasn't ranting so much, but then I appreciate the fact that I'm ranting. I wish I was able to speak more clearly on some of the things that I talk about, but I think that's one good thing about conversation and talking in general, is to help get ideas in your brain out so that it crystallizes and it becomes better understood for yourself, and better understood for yourself how to communicate it to other people. You know, I'm sure you guys may have seen the meme where it's like, what's going on in my head? What's going on in my head when it comes out my mouth? You know, what's going on in my head? 4K definition. What's coming out of my mouth? 144p quality, you know. That's why I think writing is great. Because writing, you can get those thoughts out, and then you can go back and adjust it as needed. Let's continue. Let's read this. Napoleon, way smarter than me. Tell me what must be done to ensure against the habit of drifting. I want a complete formula against anyone who can use it. Protecting against drifting lies within easy reach for every human being. Who has a normal body and a sound mind. The self-defense can be applied through these simple methods. All right, you ready? Let's look at these methods. Do you own thinking on all occasions? The fact that human beings are given complete control over nothing, save the power to think their own thoughts, is laden with significance. Decide definitely what you want from life. Then create a plan for attaining it, and what you'll be willing to sacrifice to achieve it, if necessary. Analyze temporary defeat, no matter what the nature or cause, and extract from it the seed of equivalent advantage. Be willing to render useful service equivalent to the value of all material things you demand of life, and render the service first. Recognize that your brain is a receiving set that can be attuned to receive communications from the universal storehouse of infinite intelligence to help you transmute your desires into their physical equivalent. Recognize that your greatest asset is time, the only thing except the power of thought which you own outright, and the only thing which can be shaped into whatever material things you want. Budget your time so none of it is wasted. Recognize the truth that fear generally is a filler with which the devil occupies the unseen portion of your mind. It is only a state of mind which you can control by filling the space it occupies with faith in your ability to make life provide you with whatever you demand of it. 8. When you pray, do not beg. Demand what you want and insist upon getting exactly that with no substitutes. Number 9. Recognize that life is a cruel taskmaster, and that either you master it or it masters you. There is no halfway or compromising point. Never accept from life anything you do not want. That is which you do not want is temporarily forced upon you. You can refuse in your own mind to accept it, and it will make way for the thing you do want. 10. Lastly, remember that your dominating thoughts attract, through a definite law of nature, by the shortest and most convenient route, their physical counterpart. Be careful what your thoughts dwell upon. That list looks imposing. Imposing? Give me a simple formula combining all 10 points. If you had to combine all 10 in one, what would it be? Be definite in everything you do and never leave unfinished thoughts in the mind. Form the habit of reaching definite decisions on all subjects. Can the habit of drifting be broken, or does it become permanent once it's been formed? The habit can be broken if victims have enough willpower, providing it is done in time. There is a point beyond which the habit can be never broken. Beyond that point, the victim is mine. He resembles a fly that has been caught in a spider web. He may struggle, but he cannot get out. Each move he makes entangles him more securely. The web in which I entangle my victims permanently is a law of nature, not yet isolated by or understood by men of science. Alright, so now we're going to go into the chapter of hypnotic rhythm. But before we do, I need to go and get a quick drink. Sticky notes. Exit. Okay, here we go. Put it over here. Alright, y'all. I'm not going to read the entire book tonight, but I'll go for another like 30 minutes to an hour. Just give me like 5, 10, and I'll come right back. All right. All right. So just went and had some raspberry lemonade, and I was eating some pirate booty. those like cheddar puffs. It's like a little snack, but it woke me up for a little bit, and I'm gonna go for another 30 minutes. I'm not gonna go in order 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 like that. Next time I do this book stream, I'll do that and go in order. But for the last 30 minutes, what I decided to do is I'm gonna hop around the book. When I read it and I see a question that looks interesting or valuable, I'm gonna bring it up and we're gonna talk about that. Okay, let's see. Just rhythm of thought. You guys have any interest in not interest, but any questions that you're curious if you were to ask the devil a question? Because Napoleon Hill may have already asked it. Let's see. Let's go with this one. Is the habit of definiteness a permanent protection against your control? No, not by any means. Definiteness closes the doors of one mind to me only as long as that person follows the principle as a matter of policy. Once any person hesitates, procrastinates, or becomes indefinite by anything, he is just one step removed out of my control. Okay, cool. Go to self-discipline. Where should one begin when making a start at control over self? By mastering the 3 appetites responsible for most of one's lack of self-discipline. The 3 appetites are 1. The desire for food, 2. The desire for expression of sex, and 3. The desire to express loosely organized opinions. Okay. Food, sex, and the desire to express loosely organized opinions. So if you get those in check, you're making progress towards better control over the self. Alright. Oh, this is interesting. Okay. Kind of jumping ahead, but this looks like a good answer. Or valuable response to a question. I would like you to answer my question in another way by telling me what beneficial ends the emotion of sex may be made to attain if mastered and transmuted. So if you could take the energy of sex and transmute it. See what the devil has to say about that. Controlled sex supplies the magnetic force that attracts people to one another. It is the most important factor of the pleasing personality. It gives quality to the tone of voice and enables one to convey through a voice any feeling desired. It serves as nothing else can serve. It gives motive power to one's desire. It keeps the nervous system charged with energy needed to carry on work of maintaining the body. It sharpens the imagination and enables one to create useful ideas. It gives quickness and definiteness to one's physical and mental movements. It gives one persistence and perseverance in the pursuit of one's major purpose in life. It is the great antidote for all fears. It gives one immunity against discouragement. It helps to master laziness and procrastination. It gives one physical and mental endurance while undergoing any form of opposition or defeat. It gives one the fighting qualities necessary under all circumstances for self-defense. In brief, it makes winners, not quitters. Are those all the advantages you claim for controlled sex energy? No. They are only some of the more important benefits it provides. Perhaps some will believe the greatest of all virtues of sex is that it is nature's method of perpetuation of all living things. This alone should remove all thought that sex is vulgar. What relative position of importance would you give the need for accurate knowledge on the subject of sex? It is next to the top of the list. There is but one thing of greater importance to human beings, and that is accurate thought. All right, let's jump around a little bit. Learning from adversity. I think it's something that everybody experiences to one extent or another, is adversity. But there's plenty of those cliche motivational lines that some people have trouble incorporating into real change or real positivity. And change doesn't have to be like a life change. It could just be like a mood change, or a perception change. But the cliche quotes like pain equals gain, or you can't have gain without pain, or failure is just a stepping stone, or just one step in a staircase to success. Learning from adversity. Is failure even a benefit to men? Yes. Indeed, learning from adversity is the third of the 7 principles, but few people know that every adversity brings with it a seed of equivalent advantage. Still fewer people know the difference between temporary defeat and failure. If this knowledge were generally known, it would be deprived of one of my strongest weapons of control over human beings. But I understood you to say that failure is one of the greatest allies. I got the impression from your confession that failure causes people to lose ambition and to quit trying, and then you take them over without opposition on their part. That is just the point. I'd take them over after they quit trying. If they knew the difference between temporary defeat and failure, they would not quit when they meet with opposition from life. If they knew that every form of defeat and failures bring with them the seed of an unborn opportunity, they would keep fighting and they would win. Success usually is but one short step beyond the point where one quits fighting. Is that all one might learn from adversity, defeat, and failure? No, that is the least of what one might learn. I hate to tell you this, but failure often serves as a blessing in disguise because it breaks the grip of hypnotic rhythm and frees the mind for a fresh start. But what about failure? How then can it be said that nature does not take away one's freedom of thought when failure destroys ambition, willpower, and self-control, or self-confidence, essential to make a fresh start? Failure is a man-made circumstance. It is never real until it has been accepted by man as permanent. Stating it another way, failure is a state of mind. Therefore, it is something an individual can control until he neglects to exercise his privilege. Nature does not force people to fail, but nature does impose her laws of hypnotic rhythm upon all minds, and through this law gives permanence to the thoughts which dominate those minds. In other words, failure thoughts are taken over by the law of hypnotic rhythm and made permanent if the individual accepts any circumstances as being permanent failure. The same law just as readily takes over and makes permanent thoughts of success. Stay focused on adversity, if you will. If there are possible benefits to be found through adversity, name some of them. Adversity relieves people of vanity and egotism. It discourages selfishness by proving that no one can succeed without cooperation of others. Adversity forces an individual to test his mental, physical, and spiritual strength. It thus brings him face to face with his weaknesses and gives him the opportunity to bridge them. Adversity forces one to seek ways and means to definite ends by meditation and introspective thought. This often leads to the discovery and use of the sixth sense, though which one may communicate with infinite intelligence. Adversity forces one to recognize the need for intelligence not available except from sources outside of one's own mind. Adversity breaks old habits of thought and gives one an opportunity to form a new habit. Therefore, it may serve to break the old hypnotic rhythm and change its operation from negative to positive end. What great benefit one may receive through adversity? The greatest benefit of adversity is that it may and generally does force one to change one's thought habits, thus breaking and redirecting the force of hypnotic rhythm. Might understand from you the way you say every adversity is a blessing. No, I did not say that. I said that there's a seed of equivalent advantage in every adversity. I did not say that it was a full-blown flower of advantage. Just a seed. Usually a seed consists of some form of knowledge, some idea and plan, some opportunity, which would not have been available except through the change of thought habits forced by the adversity. In chapter 12, environment, time, harmony, and caution. Okay, go ahead and describe the working principle of environmental influences as determining factor in human destinies. Okay, so how much does your environment play a part in your destiny? Environment consists of all the mental, spiritual, and physical forces which affect and influence human beings. What is the most important part of one's environment, the part which determines more than others whether an individual makes positive or negative use of his mind? The most important part of one's environment is that, created by his association with others, all people absorb and take over, either consciously or unconsciously, the thought habits of those with whom they associate closely. Then it is important that one selects one's close associate with great care. Yes, one's intimate associates should be chosen with as much care as the food that goes in your body, with the object always of associating with people whose dominating thoughts are positive, friendly, and harmonious. Which class of associate has the greatest influence upon us? One's partner in marriage, and in the home of one's association of his occupation. After that comes close friends and acquaintances. Casual acquaintances and strangers have little influence on one another. So I got to pick your partner, the right person. People ask me, I've been in a solid relationship for almost a decade. What is the secret to being in a great relationship? The answer is being with the right person. And not being selfish either, not being a freaking dick. Is that all there is to act of eliminating the habit of drifting? Is the habit only a state of mind? Drifting is nothing but a negative state of mind, a state of mind conspicuous by its emptiness of purpose. What are the most impelling basic motives or desires which inspire thought action? The 10 most common motives, those which inspire most of one's thought actions, are the desire for sex expression and love, the desire for physical food, the desire for spiritual, mental, physical self-expression, the desire for perpetuation. Some of these words: preservation of life after death, the desire for power over others, the desire for material wealth, the desire for knowledge, the desire to imitate others, the desire to excel others, the 7 basic fears. These are the dominating motives which inspire the majority of all human endeavors. Sure, a lot of people are driven by fears. What's this quote? Nature will not tolerate idleness or vacuums of any sort. All spaces must be and is filled with something. When the individual does not use the brain for the expression of positive creative thoughts, nature fills the vacuum by forcing the brain to act upon negative thoughts. I agree with that. That is an enlightening interpretation of nature's way. To whom may I turn for corroboration for your claims? To men of science, to the philosophers, the accurate thinkers, lastly to the physical manifestations of nature herself. Nature has no such thing as dead matter. Every atom of matter is constantly in a state of motion. All energy is constantly in motion. There are no dead voids anywhere. Time and space are literally manifestations of motion of such swiftness that it cannot be measured by human beings. I got the summary. One's dominating desires can be crystallized into their physical equivalent through definiteness of purpose, backed by definite plans with the aid of natural laws of hypnotic hypnotic rhythm and time. At Napoleon Hill, you have to think and reach your own conclusions concerning every part of it, how reasonable that is. You are the judge and the jury and the attorney and both the prosecutors and the defense. If you do not win your case, the loss and the cause therefore will be yours. That's Napoleon Hill's closing statements. I'm reading the last paragraph instead of reading his whole thing, so I'm jumping around. But I think this book does have a lot of value. I think it's a mixture of being valuable, but also being just super fun and interesting, to imagine like in the 1930s, this guy interviewing like the devil, and what if the devil was real and all this stuff was true? I think a lot of people that are religious would probably agree with a lot of stuff Napoleon Hill said. He wasn't a dumb guy, and I think religion was very much a part of his upbringing. Alright, let's go back, and before we close out this video, let's read a couple more. Let's go into Definiteness of purpose. Alright, so discuss these 7 principles to attain spiritual and mental and physical freedom. Definiteness of purpose, mastery over self, learning from adversity, controlling environmental influences, time, giving permanence to positive rather than negative thought habits, and developing wisdom, harmony, acting with definiteness of purpose to become dominating influence in your own mental, spiritual, and physical environment, and caution, thinking through your plan before you act. Open up. Let's hear what you have to say about the principles of definiteness of purpose. You are pouring water on the fires of hell, but the responsibility is yours, not mine. I may as well tell you that any human being who can be definite in his aims and plans can make life hand over whatever is wanted. That's a broad claim. Do you wish to tone it down a bit? Tone it down? No, I wish to tone it up. When you hear what I now have to say, you will understand why the principle of definiteness is so important. My opposition uses clever little tricks to cheat me of my control over people. The opposition knows that definiteness of purpose closes the door of one's mind so tightly against me that I cannot break through unless I induce one to form the habit of drifting. Is definiteness of purpose something by which one must be born or may be acquired? Everyone, as I've told you before, is born with the privilege of being definite, but 98% out of 100 lose this privilege by sleeping on it. The privilege of definiteness can be attained by adopting it as a policy by which one is guided in all affairs of life. Is the habit of definiteness permanent protection against your control? No, not by any means. Definite closes the door of one mind to me, and only as long as a person follows the principle as a matter of policy. Once any person hesitates, procrastinates, or becomes indifferent about anything, he is just one step removed from my control. So, says the devil, once any person hesitates, procrastinates, or becomes indifferent about anything, he is just one step removed from my control. So, I hope you guys have been enjoying this book. Doing these live stream reads is pretty fun. It forces me to sit down and read the book out loud because my mind doesn't stop thinking. I'm always thinking about something, and a lot of times I'm thinking about a lot of things, a lot of nothing, a lot of important stuff, a lot of unimportant stuff. And sometimes when I read by myself, I get into the habit of, I hate saying it, but drifting, where my thoughts are drifting, where I'm reading words, but I'm thinking about something else. And even with audiobooks, maybe some audiobooks are boring and I just tune them out. But sometimes I just have so much going on in my head that I should just pause it and maybe meditate um, before listening to it. But doing this, it forces me to sit here and read. And when I'm reading it aloud, I'm seeing it and I'm saying it. It's help affirming it in my head and helping it stick and helping the information um, download into my consciousness, so to speak, more effectively. So for that, I find it to be really valuable, um, whether I have 0 people or 10 people watching or 100 people, it's valuable regardless. And people can always go back and watch it. So, but I'm going to do another stream where I'm reading this book and some of the questions that Napoleon Hill asked the devil. Probably do at least one more, maybe 2 more videos on it. And I want to do more. I've been really busy with switching careers, going from resort condo sales to doing residential home sales. Now I'm a realtor, and I've been active realtor now for 2 months, and I'm working with a good friend who does really well, top 15 in the nation. However, I am very overwhelmed, and I have a lot of respect for realtors that make a career out of this. It's definitely ones that grind it from the bottom up, because it is not easy. It is a lot of freaking work, and the hours that I've been putting in have been more than I did at working at the resort. But I'm grateful for it because it's making me a harder worker. It's making me more self-reliant, and it's making me take on something that a couple years ago I would say I was scared to take on. So, but yeah, long days. Haven't had much time to make videos on the side as I would like to, but a lot of my more recent videos would get like 60 views or like 110 views or like maybe 250 views. So it's hard to justify putting it out there on a consistent weekly basis because I am on this new career where it requires 80 hours a week sometimes, and I do have a family, which are a priority. But I just got to do it, I gotta stop like just complaining about it and procrastinating, But just because I've procrastinated on forcing a video up on YouTube doesn't mean I'm procrastinating on other things in life. And I do have priorities, and I haven't missed a beat with those. So for that, I'm not a procrastinator. But with some things, I guess I am. But if you procrastinate on your priorities and you make a purpose to do things that are not a priority, then you might have things backward. And I've been guilty of that myself too. So, but if you're watching, I appreciate you. Thanks for hanging out. I hope you got value from the book. I do apologize for my rants that I went on. I hope they were interesting and they maybe made you think about something in a different way. And I'll see you on the next one. So I'll catch you all later.